The Third Testament, Revelations of Jesus Christ, Chapter 24, Spiritual and Material Creation. The creation of spiritual beings. Thus saith the Lord. Before the worlds, before any creature or any matter came to life, my divine spirit existed. However, being all, I felt in myself an enormous emptiness, for I was like a king without subjects, or a master without disciples. And for that reason, I conceived the idea of creating beings in my likeness, to whom I would dedicate all of my life, whom I would love so deeply and intensely that when the moment arrived, I would not hesitate to offer them my blood on the cross. Do not be confused when I tell you that before you existed, I loved you already. Yes, my much loved children. The Divine Spirit was filled with love in spite of the fact that none but He existed. Nothing had been created. Nothing surrounded the Divine Being, and nonetheless, He loved and felt Himself to be a Father. Whom did He love? Of whom did He feel Father? Of all the beings and all the creatures that would spring from Him, and whose strength was latent in His Spirit. In that Spirit was all science, all the elements, all nature and all principles. He was both eternity and time. In Him were the past, the present and the future, even before the beginning of the lives of worlds and beings. That divine inspiration was made reality by the infinite force of divine love, and life began. So that God could be called Father, He brought forth from His bosom spirits, creatures similar to Himself in divine attributes, and that was your beginning. In that way you sprang into spiritual life. Love was the reason for having created you. I had a divine yearning to share my power with someone, and love was also the reason for having endowed you with free will. I wanted to feel loved by my children, not by law, but through a spontaneous feeling which would sprout freely from your spirits. Each spirit sprang from a pure thought of the divinity, and therefore the spirits are perfect works of the Creator. The role of great spirits in the creative work. Elijah is the great spirit that is at the right hand of God, and who in his humility calls himself the servant of God, and through whose conduit, and through the conduits of other great spirits, I move the spiritual universe and carry out great and elevated designs. Yes, my disciples, in my service I have a multitude of great spirits that direct creation. The providential thoughts of God. Listen, disciples, before I created you, I already existed, and your spirits were a part of me. However, I did not want you to inherit my kingdom without making yourselves deserving. I did not want you to possess that which was in existence without knowing who had created you. Nor did I want you to proceed without direction, without a destination, and without an ideal. That is why I gave you a conscience to be your guide. I granted you free will so that your deeds would have true value before me. I gave you a spirit so that it would always yearn to elevate itself toward that which is bright and pure. I gave you a body so that through the heart you would be sensitive to the good and beautiful, and so that it would serve as a crucible for constant testing and as an instrument to inhabit the material world. The creation of material worlds for the spiritual beings. When for the first time space was illuminated with the presence of spirits, these spirits, uttering their first words and taking their first steps like babes, and not having the elevation nor the strength to sustain themselves, in highly evolved spiritual mansions, felt the need for a support, a hold in order to feel strong. They were given a material form and a material world, and in their new state, they proceeded to acquire experience and knowledge. The universe was filled with beings, and in all the love, power and wisdom of the Father was manifest. The bosom of the Lord has been like an endless fountain of life, since the instant in which he deigned that atoms might unite to form bodies and integrate beings. Spiritual life existed first. First were the spirits and then material nature. As it was decided that many spiritual creatures would take corporeal form to inhabit material worlds, all was prepared in advance, so that the children of the Lord would find all in readiness. He sowed the road his children were to travel with blessings, flooded the universe with life, filled the road of man with beauty, and placed in him a divine beam of light. The conscience and spirit forming them in this way from love, intelligence, strength, will, and conscience. Yet, all that exists was wrapped in his strength and shown its destiny. Thus, when the Father formed the world and gave it as its destiny to be a place of atonement, he knew already that his children would have weaknesses and stumble on their journey, that it would be necessary that there be a dwelling where they might take the first steps toward regeneration and perfection. The creation of human beings. Listen, God, the Supreme Being, created you in His image and likeness, not in the material form that you have, but in the virtue with which your spirit is endowed, similar to those of the Father. How pleasing it has been to your vanity to believe yourselves the image of your Creator. You believe yourselves to be the most evolved creatures created by God, and you are in grave error to assume that the universe was created only for you. With how much ignorance you call yourselves the kings of creation. Understand that not even the earth is created only for men. In the endless ladder of the divine creation, there exists an infinite number of spirits who are evolving in fulfillment of the law of God. The purpose contained in all this, which as men you would be unable to understand even if you wished to, are great and perfect, as are all the designs of the Father. Yet, truly I say, you are neither the greatest nor the smallest of the creatures of the Father. You were created, and at that instant your spirit took life from the Almighty, bearing within it as many attributes as were necessary to fulfill a delicate mission within eternity. Within the spirit of man, which is my masterpiece, I have placed my divine light. I have cultivated it with infinite love, as a gardener cultivates the favorite plant of his garden. I have placed you in this mansion, where nothing will be lacking for your livelihood, so that you will know me and know yourselves. I have given you power in your spirit to feel the life of the hereafter, and senses in your body so that you can enjoy and perfect yourselves. I have given you this world so that in it you will commence to take your first steps, and in this path of progress and perfection you can experience the perfection of my law, so that during your lifetime you can recognize and love me, and through your merits you can reach me. I have granted you the gift of freedom of will, and I have endowed you with a conscience. The first is for your freedom to develop within my laws, and the second to be able to distinguish good from evil, so that it will tell you like a perfect judge whether you are complying or are at fault with my law. The conscience is light of my divine spirit, which never leaves from you at any moment. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am peace and happiness, the eternal promise that you will be with me, and also the fulfillment of all my words. The memory of paradise. Those first men, they who were the fathers of humanity, preserved for a time the impression that their spirits brought from the spiritual valley, an impression of blessedness, peace, and delight that remained in them until the rise in their lives of the passions of the material form and the struggle to subsist. Yet I should tell you, although the spirit of those men did come from a mansion of light, it was not from one of the highest dwelling places, those to which you may come only by merit. Nonetheless, the state of innocence, peace, welfare, and health that those spirits preserved in their first steps were like a time of light, unforgettable, and of which testimony was given to their children, and by them to their descendants. The materialist minds of men, confusing the true meaning of that testimony, came to believe that the paradise in which the first man lived was an earthly paradise, not understanding that it was the spiritual state of those creatures. The nature of human beings. Spirit and matter are two distinct natures, from which your being is formed, and above both is the conscience. The first is the daughter of the light, the second proceeds from the earth. It is material. Both are in unity within one being, and they struggle between themselves, guided by the conscience, in which you have the presence of God. This struggle up to now has been constant, but in the end, spirit and matter will fulfill in harmony the mission that my law indicates to each one. You may also picture the spirit as if it were a plant, and the body as the earth. The spirit which has been planted in the body grows. It elevates itself, being sustained by the trials and teachings which it receives throughout its human existence. The unity of the Creator with creation. The Spirit of God is like an infinite tree, in which the branches are the worlds and the leaves are the beings. If the sap is the same that runs through the trunk to all branches, and from these to the leaves, do you not believe that there is something eternal and holy that unites you among yourselves and merges you with the Creator? My spirit, which is universal, exists in all that I have created, whether that be of the spiritual or material nature. My work is in all, giving testimony of my perfection in each of its planes. My divine work embraces all, from the greatest and most perfect beings that dwell by my right, to the most imperceptibly small animal, to the vegetable and the mineral, and in the atoms and cells that form all creatures. In this I show you yet again the perfection of all created by me, from the material beings to the spirits that have already achieved perfection. That is my work. He who separates from the spiritual law, which is a superior law, falls under the domination of the inferior or material laws, those of which human beings also know very little. But he who obeys and remains in harmony with the supreme law is above all rules that you call natural, and feels and understands more than the one who only possesses knowledge which he has found in science or in the religions. Consider why Jesus surprised you with the deeds that you call miracles, but recognize the lessons of love that he gave you. Understand that there is nothing supernatural or contradictory within the divine which vibrates in all creation.